Learn from those around you, learn from the mentors that you can find because you can shorten the gap. What took their mentors 20 years to do, they've done in 10. So why don't you take what you can learn from them and do it in 5?
Hi, and welcome to the Studio Takeover podcast. I'm your host, Cat Ford Coates. Today, I am joined by Joni Hough. She owns Mint Hill Photography, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Joni, welcome.
Hi, Kat. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here. When we sort of schedule these appointment conversations, I'm always really excited when my students who are like in the trenches and doing the work are brave enough to stand up and be like, I'll come. Because everybody feels like they have to come and impart this, big life-changing wisdom, when really I think that people get the most out of it when they're listening to people who are doing the thing and growing and moving. And now we're on the podcast. You are here. You are running a business based in Charlotte. And I know like you sort of came into this space like, I really want to do this. Not quite sure how. I know I need direction. What do I do? Right. And you're part of a husband and wife team doing this. And I know working with partners can sometimes be challenging. So I would love to know more about how both of you are kind of coming into the space of this CEO-ness of running a business and the successes and the failures that you guys are finding.
Well, first off, I'm the CEO and queen.
And queen, of course.
And he is our consultant. He actually went to photography school. I did not. So I went to art school, but not for photography. He is really great with lighting. He is not so great with posing because he didn't learn that in photography school. So I kind of pick up on the soft skills that he didn't learn in photography school. Honestly, he and I have always worked so well together creatively. We've been married for 16 years. We've been together almost 20. Our best work that either one of us has ever done has come out of our collaborations.
That's cool. Well, and I like that, when you started working with me, you were almost scared of lighting. I remember being in this space, coming in, and I was really learning like natural light photography and, how to bounce the God light around. But strobes scared the bejesus out of me. And I don't know why. I think it was always like the lighting ratios and distance and, the math of light that meant like I had to have some kind of PhD behind it to work with it. Once I was brave enough to start doing it, like all of a sudden it just kind of clicked and started to make sense. I got tutorials. Like I bought a course from Felix Kuhn's, his lighting series, both of them, in studio and on location are fantastic. But working with you specifically, you came to a workshop that I gave over the summer. You were like, do I touch it? What do I do? And now I see you like you're behind the scenes, all of that on Instagram, because I try to follow all of my students and just kind of keep tabs on them, but I see you moving light and really working to master your craft, which I'm really proud of you, Joni.
I really am trying. And we had a shoot on Monday and I was actually like, wait, this light's too hot. No, I got to turn it down a little bit. And David was like, are you sure about that? I'm like, yeah, I am sure. And that was kind of the first time I've really done that where I'm like, no, I'm gonna trust me on this. I'm the one looking in the back of the camera. I know what I'm doing.
Well, and being able to trust yourself in that space when you are scared and avoiding like light, for instance, or the camera tech, you're just going to kind of overshoot to compensate for the fact that you don't know what's happening. And when you're in control of the situation, it's like, look, I know I can, raise my shutter speed. I can turn the light down if I decide it's too hot and I want to be this far open and so on and so forth. That's a big step. That's awesome. With your business, when did you officially open?
2021. Officially transitioned from health coaching into photography in 2021. But then I took a detour to cosmetology school because I was having trouble finding hair and makeup artists. And I had someone come in who actually came to the school and I did her hair and makeup. And then I left school early, came to my studio. We did our photo shoot and I was absolutely exhausted. Whereas I can only do one person a day if I do the hair and the makeup too,
Mm-hmm.
and the photo shoot. I can't actually do all the things. And so it just was really like a wake up call. That one time I was like, okay, this is just not feasible. It's not gonna work for my brain, for my body. It's just not, it's too much. And I'm very cautious
Mm-hmm.
of doing too much because I've burned out before. That was a wake up call. And I was like, no, this is taking too long. It's too long of a program. I want to get back into photography. Photography is what I love. That's what I want to be doing. The first workshop I did with you was, I think, in April. So it was very, very soon after just being like, no, we're not doing everything. We're gonna focus on the photography.
Well, and being aware of your own limitations to make a sound decision as the CEO of a business. Like, is it helpful for you to understand hair and makeup? Sure. Does that mean that you need to be the one who executes that skill? That really is up to you, right? But then you look at it and you're like, wait, hair and makeup on its own is its own profession and takes skill and energy and technique, as does photography. And when you are expounding on your skill sets as a photographer, whether we're talking about lighting design or new camera techniques, all of that power, and you're protecting your energy, which is fantastic because that's exactly how you need to show up for your business, and doing everything without either integrating some support for yourself or simply holding a boundary and saying, this isn't sustainable. I'm not going to do it. That's, I think, a piece of the puzzle that a lot of people miss because they're trying to save this $100 or this $300 and not realizing that it's actually costing you the capacity to make another 3,000 in the same day.
Exactly.
Right. So you look at it and just like you said, I would only be able to take one person a day if I'm the one managing this. But if your average sale, if your middle package, right, what's the cost of that middle package? Well, if you can only manage one person a day, then that's the maximum amount you can make in that day. Whereas if you integrate support that maybe costs you 10% of whatever that middle package is, then well, now I can do 2 or maybe 3 or maybe even 8. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, because yes, you're protecting your energy, but you're also taking a look at your revenue, like what the potential that has when you're managing and doing the technician for all of the things. Well, that takes away your ability to expand your capacity to generate, which is pretty great. You don't find too many new business owners that allow themselves to live in that headspace.
I have a history of some emotional dysregulation. So I like to be very protective of that. Like, my sleep is sacred. My self-care routine is sacred. Nothing gets in the way of those things. So I have to be very protective of that.
How do you go about doing that? Right? Like, in actionable steps, right? Is it like, okay, I know that I can protect my energy by saying no to, being the hair and makeup artist for my work. But is that also like boundaries in your calendar? Is that like focusing your energy with specific activities? Like, what does that look like in your world?
It's all of that. It's protecting it with boundaries in my calendar. You taught me to switch from my paper calendar to my digital, and I am married to it. It's the third person in our relationship.
Uh-huh.
I schedule in my morning routine is already scheduled for every day on my calendar from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. I get up at 4:30 every morning, which means I go to bed no later than 8 o'clock at night. So I don't do night networking. But if it's a morning breakfast networking, I am there for it. It also means running. I am a runner and I have to get out and run. And I like to think of it as running the crazy off.
Bodies in motion. I love it. I love it. Well, and understanding, like, because I'm a morning person too, right? I'm usually up around, between 4:30 and 5:30 most days. And that's just like circadian rhythm, like, oh, okay, I'm awake now. My dog hates it. She's always like, but why? Now, okay, so your first workshop was April of last year.
Yes.
But if you're thinking in the space of like, okay, how far has she gotten? What has she accomplished? Like, what were your priorities when you said, no, photography is my focus? I'm moving, I'm doing this. How did you arrange your priorities from that space?
In that space, it became very chaotic with my priorities because I was like, I feel like I'm spinning. I don't know what I need to do. I know I need to do all the things. I need to update my website. We changed the business name. We did like a bajillion things, it felt like. Then I went to the workshop with you and I was like, I came back with an action list basically. And I was like, okay, now I have some focus. So the focus was networking. I have a goal this year of 2 to 4 times per week being at networking events and or meeting people one-on-one. So that's my main focus right now is still networking.
And what does that look like for you? You have 2 to 4 times a week, either one-on-one or going to an event. Is there specific networking events that you're finding are more in alignment with where you want to be than others? And the reason I ask is, when I first kind of started hitting networking really hard, it was like, I'm going to show up for anything and everything I can get my hands on. I was on Eventbrite looking, Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere looking for event opportunities. And I even hit a wall at one point and I was like, everybody is asking me to trade services, but they're having that conversation around the room. And I would think about it like if it's a service I would actually use, right? Whether we're talking about a stylist or a massage or acupuncture or whatever, then I would consider it. Or then there was always like, well, it'll be exposure because I have a great big network. And then, you go through and do all of this work and nothing happens. But then I started discovering some other areas where the conversation was different. It wasn't like there were still offers for partial trade and things like that, but people were talking about collaborations and the word revenue was used. And, like people were more in like those, they were looking for partnerships to scale their outreach. And for me, that's when I was like, oh, this room is different. This room is different. Is that happening for you in Charlotte?
It's beginning to. I've gotten a lot of can we do a headshot day? And I'm like, not so much. But I've found certain groups are very, and I get a lot of, well, can you bring your camera to this? And I'm like, no, no, no. I am not an event photographer, and that is okay.
Now I'm curious about the headshot day, and this is just a mentor in me, what your aversion to a headshot day might be.
I'm not opposed to doing one like in my studio. I'm opposed to going somewhere and doing one. So I'm not opposed to doing it all together, but I want the hair and makeup for the client. I want the consultation. I don't want to, like somebody from my local chamber, for example, wanted me to do a headshot day for them. And I was like, that's not really what we do.
Well, you can incorporate those things though, like in the negotiation for what that looks like. I mean, it's not just to show up and get your headshot. It's, there are specific people that are involved and you make appointments and then you require a consultation, which you could set up in a group setting beforehand. And then have a hair and makeup artist there for touch-ups to bring people to camera ready. Because the whole purpose of hair and makeup isn't just to make somebody look better, right? And that often gets confused with photographers because, yeah, okay, it does help with retouching, right? It does make skin texture retouching much easier when it's done well. But it's really there to help somebody just sort of relax for a moment and feel supported and feel cared for. The key with headshot days that are on location is really you having an assistant and a system in place. You're also charging, in addition to your standard rates, a location fee. And when it's presented in a negotiation, it's this and that everything's broken out in a line item. Then people realize that actually coming to your space is more advantageous from the fiscal standpoint. But you certainly could manage it and bring your hair and makeup artist with you and just set those boundaries in a negotiation for sure.
Yeah. And I think if I had the system for it, I would be much less averse to it.
Well, the system, like, let's talk it through, right? Your system as it stands right now is what? Talk me through your client experience just from inquiry through image selection.
Okay, so we've got inquiry that leads to a phone call. They can book that on my website, or I schedule it in person. And if we're a good fit, they pay the sitting fee, and we schedule their consultation and their shoot. On the day they come to me, we've got hair and makeup here waiting for them. They go into hair and makeup. Then we shoot 5 to 7 outfits, and then we go straight into image selection.
And there's a lot more communication that happens there. You have, emails that go out that outline your agreement. And during the consultation, you really set them up for success by prepping them on, what to wear, what photographs well, what doesn't. You get to know about their brand. And that's beyond color scheme, but it's more about like understanding how they want to be perceived in the marketplace. Now, when you're talking about on location for, say, a corporation or a chamber, you would present your point person with, line iteming your process, just like we just talked through. And then instead of one individual consultation per person, you would hold, depending on the number of people, 1, 2, or 3 Zoom calls that they could all join you for that consultation piece.
Okay.
Right. And talk through those things with everybody that will be in attendance so that they do feel prepared. They're aware of the process, what they're getting, how to show up for it. And in corporate environments, that can be kind of annoying for them because they're just like, the business wants me to show up for a headshot. This is so dumb. Why am I taking time out? But when I think you present them with the possibility when you're teaching people how to leverage their imagery in social media and how to partner that imagery with their messaging, things sort of shift and it becomes a little more exciting for them. And then having somebody there that's like, look, we want you to come camera ready, but we know that that's going to be different for everyone, especially if you're somebody who doesn't really wear a lot of makeup. We'll have a hair and makeup person on set with us. And so you'll be in hair and makeup for 10 to 15 minutes while they, kind of comb through your hair and get that ready, add some lashes if that's a look you want to go for, and really just kind of even out your skin tone so that, like you look polished and ready for your session itself. And then I'll photograph you for, whatever the time frame is, right? And you'll then pass off your card, right, to an assistant that you bring with you, and they'll manage image selection while the next person comes out of hair and makeup. And then you just go through and roll through like that. And then everybody, has whatever value is included with the session fee that you charged the primary business owner with. And if people want to purchase more, they can, but you would have made them aware of that at that design consultation on that group call. That's definitely a way, especially when you're building a reputation and credibility. It can be really tough to hold a line to where like everybody's going to get this big, long experience with you and not be able to kind of meet them halfway. And I'm not saying to compromise your service either, right? Like the biggest compromise there would be the hair and makeup piece. But it really is just about getting people to the space of feeling really great to be in the moment, versus showing up and just turn and burn 50 people and everybody hates everything. You're miserable, your team is miserable, and you're exhausted, right? So you can create that same system to be on location without having to feel like you're compromising the value of what it is that you do. So I hope that's helpful.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
I did see where on your Instagram, like all through January, you've been focusing on 24 and 24. Tell me more about this. This seems like such a cool way to start the new year.
So I got the idea from Gretchen Rubin, the writer of The Happiness Project and other things. Mm-hmm. It's basically 24 things that I'm doing basically 24 times in 2024. So for example, I am training 24 minutes a day, every day for 2024. Running at least 24 miles a month. I'm doing 24 5Ks.
So what are your milestones for that? Like no pun intended.
I'm kind of tagging along with a friend. I have a running buddy who is doing 100 miles in October at this race. And I'm doing 50 miles. So I'm kind of training with her.
Okay. So now you're sharing all of these on your social media. So every day you post a new video, and I love how you're creating engagement there. And like when we're talking about social media, I was talking with somebody else this morning who was saying, like, I feel like I'm not getting any engagement. I want to reach a larger audience. And my question really was, are you engaging with the audience that you have? So are you finding that, like the videos that you're posting and the photo work that you're posting, like that you're growing your audience, or that you're really just deepening the connection with the one that you have already?
I feel like I'm a little bit of both, mostly the deepening the connection with the audience that I already have. I also am gaining some followers that way too.
That is terrific. This past year, you've been in business now for almost a year, in like 3 months, like full time at it. So surely there have been some pieces where you were like, I can't wait to implement this. And then you do the thing, and then it just goes completely sideways on you. What's the lesson? What happened?
Don't be so afraid. For me, I have to not be so afraid to reach out to people and offer them gift vouchers to come in.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that twice now, and both have led to sales. And that's been
Mm-hmm.
two of my most successful client experiences. So I just have to get out of my head and get into doing that more. And that's actually on my
Okay.
calendar for today, is to brainstorm with my husband about, okay, who else do we need to reach out to for gift vouchers?
What do you think the fear around that is? Like, what is the voice in your head, like, that's like, don't do it, don't do it, it's not going to go anywhere? What are you thinking? Like, what's the actual fear that's happening there?
It's some fear of rejection,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just tell myself, like, no, that's normal. Nene fluffy, we're not going to go there. And, and then I hear your voice saying Nene fluffy, and then I'm like, okay, no, we're going to do it anyway.
Okay, so the fear of rejection, somebody saying no, right? What
Mhm.
does that feel like?
It kind of feels like a gut punch. Like intellectually, I know the why is because we all have fear of rejection and all that, but just from a personal level, it takes me back to middle school, feeling rejected, and you get all those
Mhm.
feels.
Middle school. Oof. That's a
Exactly.
whole other conversation. Right. But because the reason I'm pressing on this is that's something that we all face.
Mhm.
Every last person, the super successful person, you're like, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm totally going to call this person and invite them in for a photo shoot, and I'm going to give them a gift voucher, and they're going to say no. And I'm immediately going to tie it to my personal worth as a human being and feel like a dick when they say no. Of course, they're going to say no. Why would they say yes? When really, there's a million reasons why somebody could say no, thank you. And no isn't no. Typically, no is not right now, right? And I'm not speaking about like consent. I'm speaking about, I don't have the bandwidth, because when you give somebody a gift voucher, you're also giving kind of boundaries on when it's available, right? It's not this open-ended thing they can call you back and get in 6 months. Uh, and maybe they're not available for it, or they don't have the bandwidth to prepare for it, or you don't have enough trust and enough credibility with that audience or with that person because you're new, right? And I had reached out to a buddy of mine, his wife. We bartended together, he and I, and like they were together for a really long time, and they started having kids. And I really wanted to try my hand at maternity. And I'd offered, like, can you please come in, and offered a gift voucher, thinking like, well, this is from my friend circle. Of course she'll say yes. And she said no. And I was just like, why? And made it all about me. Well, they did then from there gone, moved out to California, and came back last last winter, uh, just for a quick visit. And I went out to meet them for drinks. And she brought it up. And she was like, I can't believe I ever said no to you. Like, I look back every single time I see your photos, and I'm just like, why did I say no? And I was like, oh, girl, like, please. At the time, like, I would have been absolutely elated to photograph her and try and do a really incredible job. But I think about my work then now, and I was just like, oh, you're probably really happy you didn't say yes. Right. Like, your future self knows that it's not about you. It's never about you. It's about deepening those connections. So anytime you're feeling like, I can't call this person, or I don't know who to call, or da 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 da, like sit down with David and brain dump on all of the connections that you've made and who you can invite in, because you might get a dozen no's, but you also might get a dozen yeses. And a dozen yeses does what? Right? Out of those 12 people, oh, that means whatever, 12 times your average sale or your middle package sale, subtracting whatever the value of the voucher is. And then that revenue does what for you? There's a lot of marketing right now with freedom. I've done it. I have a course around freedom. I think it's so valuable to understand that not everybody's in a space where they can even imagine freedom at this point. And it's the stability that you have in a business that you're growing, even in your first year, that most people are dreaming about. The first 2 years of my business before I found my mentor was really just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like, we were looking at bankruptcy on multiple occasions and just trying to get something to work. And it took me back to feeling like I, was chasing stability. Because when you're in survival mode means like you can't fathom anything outside of just the freedom that stability brings you. Mm-hmm. And I love that, in knowing you and working with you, like stability is like your foundation. Like if it is not bringing stability into my life, it is a hard pass. And I love that for you so much, because I know that means you are going to fly. Okay. So we know that you had some issues, like some personal, like the feels that come up when you're about to make an offer of value to somebody. What else?
It really is just those feels. And that's the only thing that's been stopping me. So I actually reached out to someone. I just had a photo shoot with her on Monday, and it was wonderful. Mm-hmm. And that's the momentum I needed right now. And that's the momentum I'm going to keep going. It's already on the calendar this afternoon. We are brainstorming who else can we reach out to, especially during those one-to-one meetings.
Oh, yeah. One-to-ones are terrific, and it's tough. Like, have you done the math? How many of those one-on-one conversations do you need to have to make an offer? How many group meetings do you need to attend to get one-to-ones on your calendar, right? Like, have you done that math?
I have not. And that's probably the next math I need to sit down and do.
Yeah. And it would be worth having a conversation with David about this too, especially as you guys are like brain dumping on who you can invite to these one-on-one conversations, that kind of thing. Like how many people do you typically make a connection with at a group meeting?
Usually 2 to 3. 2 to 3 that you make enough of a connection with to really invite to a one-to-one and it not be really awkward.
Be memorable. Yeah. Well, and to be memorable, right? Well, then make it a goal, right? To make that 4 connections, to be memorable to others, to get business information, contact information from 4 people, because then you can start measuring the data, right? So if I make 4 meaningful connections twice a week, right? Let's say you're going to 2 networking meetings a week. That means you have 8 new contacts to potentially invite to coffee. Okay. Out of those 8 connections to invite to coffee, you may get 4 of them that say yes and take action in the next 2 weeks. Out of those 4 connections, what kind of offer of value can you bring to those conversations that allows that person to say yes? And how many of those conversations do you need to have to get a yes, whether we're talking about a gift voucher or a marketing opportunity where there's cross promotion? Because I think when you start looking at that math, you can be more intentional and strategic about the networking that you're doing and being in the rooms with the women that are about lifting one another up versus just trying to trade their services away because they can't afford to invest in themselves. So your goal on this list today is to take that list of 30 and make it 100. Yes. Okay. And that can be from like, maybe you haven't made a one-on-one connection at a group meeting, but you've seen this same 7 people at this group week after week after week, you could even put them on the list to be like, hey, Jerry, this is Joni. And I know we're in the same networking group. We see each other every single week. I would love to just connect with you one-on-one. Could we please just have a coffee date? But also prioritize that list with maybe people you don't know yet, right? Maybe the second sheet on that spreadsheet is maybe medical spas in Charlotte or plastic surgery centers in Charlotte or women in business in Charlotte, business owners, CEOs, things like that, where you reach out about those cross promotion opportunities, right? How can you support one another? I own a photography business. I would love to talk more about what that looks like for you and your business and how we can reward your customers. It's not, I'm pitching you a photo shoot. It's how can I be in service to you? I have a very valuable service. Nobody around here is anything like me at all, right? Like, I would love to know how we can reward your customers because that positions them as the hero when they reward their customers with your service. Now it's not you pitching them photo shoots or saying, sell me to your audience. It's no, like, let's come up with a way where you can reward your customers for maybe their longevity with you, or they reached a specific spend and you want to honor that and appreciate that individually for them. And those are typically those businesses that are in alignment are going to be the ones that focus their work on transformation and confidence. So just something to spin on when you guys sit down for your brain dump today. That sounds like a lot of fun. Actually, I might do that.
That's where it's great having a partner in this that I can actually brain dump with.
Well, and get that extra perspective too, right? Like with partners, it's really easy to fall into like, I know I worked with my partner years and years and years ago. We worked at an IT company and I was his, in direct supervision of him. And, I think maybe I was 20 years old, 21 at best. It was really tough for us to work together because I was his supervisor. He didn't want me in control of his job and his livelihood. And I really looked at it like, well, I can't go to him about X, Y, and Z because limiting beliefs this or back talk that. And like, so the fact that you're able to be in partnership with your husband and run a business together and appreciate that your collaborative efforts are the ones that are most fruitful for you. Like lean into that hard because that will show up in revenue too.
Like some of our clients that have been the most pleased are the creative things we've done towards the end of the shoot. For example, another runner we did a shoot with a couple of weeks ago. We photographed her with her medals because she's running all 50 states. She's doing at least, I can't remember if it's a half marathon or a marathon in each of the 50 states. And she's done 43 of them so far. So we photographed her with her medals. And
wow.
Not all of them because we couldn't fit them all in, but we did. And it took us brainstorming together to figure out how to pose her, how to light it, how to get everything in there. And that was the client's favorite pictures.
So cool. All right, Joni, talk to me about goals. What are your revenue goals for this year?
I've been trying to not set revenue goals. I've been trying to set people in the studio goals.
So how many people in the studio are we doing this year?
So we're doing 10 in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. And if I can get 10 people in each quarter, that would be wonderful.
So 40 people for the year.
40 people. If we can photograph 40 people this year,
that sounds fantastic. Yeah. So what's next for you?
Very next is let's get some self-portraits done for awards and accreditation.
Yes, there we go. Well, I do hope you post them in the Studio Takeover Facebook group.
I absolutely
would love to see them. You all know how I feel about some self-portraits, especially when we're exploring, lighting and tech and, evolving those skill sets too. So I'm very excited to see those. Joni, where can people find you online?
So I'm on Instagram at Mint Hill Photography.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. If you could give any advice to anybody considering starting their own photo studio, what would you say?
Learn from those around you. Learn from the mentors that you can find because you can shorten the gap. What took their mentors 20 years to do, they've done in 10. So why don't you take what you can learn from them and do it in 5?
Love that. Love that so much because it's true. It absolutely is true. All right, Joni. Well, I will see you in the members group because
Yes.
I do believe there's some homework due. But thank you so much for being on here with me, and I love you to pieces.
Oh, love you too, Kat. Thank you so much.